This week on the Virtual Skeptics, Eve presents This Week in Creationism, the good, the bad, and the ugly edition. Sorry about blowing your ear. Bob has a feeling he knows who the ugly is. And Tim is being trolled by Russians. I'm your host, Brian Gregory. And she's always a woman to me. Hi, this is Virtual Skeptics. You're watching. Thank you. I've got some people here with me. I'm going to introduce them, and I'm going to do that right about now. This is Bob Blaskowitz, CSI's conspiracy guy, web columnist, blogger for Skeptical Humanities, and Skepticality contributor. And this is Eve Siebert, editor and blogger at Skeptical Humanities, and contributor to Skepticality and Insight without an S at skeptic.com. And finally, Tim Farley, blogger at SkepTools and Insight without an S at skeptic.com, Skepticality contributor and creator of What's the Harm, and former DARE fellow, and it's quite a mouthful. Hi guys, how you doing?
Hello.
Good. Hello. We do a couple of things when we start the show, and to warm things up and to make you guys feel comfortable with your decision to watch us. And first thing we do is we present this week's trivia question, and that's Tim's job. And I hope he's not busy. He looks like he's busy.
I was just looking up something to use as a trivia question. I never plan anything ahead. June 5th, 1981.
Whoa.
Right here in Atlanta, the Center for Disease Control and Prevention. I don't know if they had the prevention part then.
Isn't that the Opera House?
No.
Before it exploded, right?
Walking Dead joke.
Before they exploded.
And Center for Disease Control reported what?
Oh, I know exactly what this is.
1981. What did they report? That you would not have known the significance of it at the time, but we now know that that was what they were reporting at that time.
June 5th.
1981.
CDC in Atlanta? Or
Yep.
just the CDC?
Well, CDC. It's based here in Atlanta.
Yeah.
Right down the street from me.
Yeah.
I drive by it all the time.
Has not been blown up yet, so that did not happen.
That was just on TV.
Yes.
Have you been to the museum?
I have not been to the CDC museum. I hear it's kind of interesting.
It is really interesting, and
not.
Eve
Sorry.
does not understand things.
There's a lot of exciting security to go through, though.
That's true.
Oh, well, I bet, yeah. They
They wouldn't want the zombies to get in, so.
Well, a few years ago, they changed the whole front of the building, and there's all these bollards, and yeah, it's not
I
an
think
easy
there were
building to
3
walk
security
into.
checks to get to the museum. I mean, it was impressive.
Yeah.
And you have to drive your car over a camera.
Ooh.
Yeah,
Wow.
it's like going onto a military base. It was impressive.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. So that sounds like fun. Do they cabby search you?
Only if you ask nicely.
Okay. So our secondary thing that I do, because I like to do it, but no one seems to care, is the 2 screens behind me. I have a couple of videos playing. If you can figure out what they are and mention them somewhere on Twitter, which, if you want to involve in the show, you can tweet with #VirtualSkeptics, you can comment on the YouTube, or you can use the Q&A app and ask us a question, and we'll work you into the show. But yes, if you comment on something related to the videos behind me, I will be very happy. See, it's
And
Oh,
surprised.
God. Your happy face is terrifying.
my fake happy face. So, this week we got some stuff for you right now, and we're starting with, guess what? Tim again. Go, Tim, go.
Me. It's a good thing somebody already got the answer.
What?
I am talking about trolls. There was a very interesting article in the New York Times this week, which
That was unreal.
A somewhat personal connection to, because the fact checker for that article contacted me via email about some technical stuff regarding the article. So I knew the article
Cool.
was coming. No, nothing needed to be changed. He just wanted to know how plausible certain connections were. But it was our old friend Adrian Chen, who's done some interesting investigations of crazy people on Reddit and other ne'er-do-wells on the internet. And this time he's in the New York Times talking about the Internet Research Bureau, or whatever the fake name is, but essentially people commonly refer to it as the Russian troll army. And what it is our old buddy Vladimir Putin and his pals are convinced that the internet is key to maintaining order, and don't want to get it out of control. So basically they've hired this huge squad of people who literally sit on the internet, if you mention if you mention Vladimir Putin in your blog, or you say something about Russian policy or Ukraine or something like that, these people show up in your comments and say pro-Putin stuff, and they run fake Twitter accounts, and they're constantly pushing things, and they get orders.
Starting a blog.
And Adrian went and talked to some former employees who worked there, and talked to a Russian journalist who had investigated it prior. And then it got weird because he met with one of the former employees who innocently said, "Hey, can I bring my brother to the meeting? You know, you're an American, I'm a Russian, I don't know who you are, I'd like to have someone." And he's like, "Oh, sure, we're going to meet in a restaurant. Sure, bring whoever you want." And the guy shows up, and he's wearing like a Nazi t-shirt, and he has Nazi tattoos, and he's wearing these big sunglasses, and like he's a huge tough guy, and sits directly across from the guy, and the guy's like, "Okay, this is odd," but then he doesn't say anything, and a little bit of chit chat, and then he talks to the woman the whole time, and then later come to find out it was completely a setup, that they knew he was meeting with this woman, and they had, I guess, someone had told her to bring this guy, and then they took pictures of Adrian Chen with the guy, and then floated, before Adrian had a chance to run his story in the New York Times, they ran a story in the Russian media about how the New York Times had sent this guy to meet with this neo-Nazi punk to basically, diminish his credibility in the Russian media. Wow. So then he got super paranoid that he was being followed around, and apparently there was a photo in one of the articles of him coming out of his hotel, so he knew people were following him the whole time he was in Russia, and so super freaky stuff. But apparently it's, buddies of Vladimir Putin who pay for this thing, and they hire, whoever they can get, and if you're an American and you find one of these accounts online, and some of them do tweet and post in English, but a lot of them are just posting in Russian on Russian language websites. The ones that post in English often use hilariously bad English and don't understand stuff. And the interesting part, and the part I was asked to comment on, was there was this weird hoax that had been previously documented on Medium or some website, I'll have the link, where somebody had found this whole bunch of Twitter accounts in the fall of last year tweeting about a non-existent news story. And they were obviously trying to make this fake news story trend and get the media to pick up on it. And get it, and the story had to do with an explosion at a chemical plant in New Orleans, outside New Orleans, where there are a lot of chemical plants and refineries and whatnot. And of course, no such explosion had happened. But part of the story was that supposedly this was ISIS. That ISIS had attacked in the U.S. and blown up this refinery, and it failed, ultimately failed, but somebody online got wind of it and found all these Twitter accounts, and Adrian Chen was able to connect a few dots to connect this back to the troll army. That some of the same accounts were tweeting either earlier or later about some of the topics that the troll army does, and he was able to connect the little tool they were using to auto post their Twitter stuff to an account that was owned by a guy who is the head of the troll army, or is one of the main guys in the troll army. So it was an interesting piece of an investigation. There were some leaked documents from Anonymous that came into part of it, and it was a very interesting combination of online investigation and just plain old shoe leather reporting. So it was really interesting, and it makes you think sometimes about some of these things that start to trend on Twitter and how much effort is being expended to manipulate what we see online, and especially now that so many news organizations kind of draw their stories from Twitter. I mean, I don't know how many. I don't watch a lot of TV news, and one of the reasons I don't anymore is because you watch, one of the TV news channels for like 5 minutes, and they're always talking about, well, let's go to Twitter. And they'll talk about something they saw on Twitter, and it's like, how about you do some reporting instead of just looking and see what people are gabbing about on Twitter, for crying out loud.
Look, I have one job on this ship.
Exactly. Hold, please. And see, I got your reference.
Very nice.
Yeah, so it's very interesting. I highly recommend you read it.
Wait a minute. I just got it, I think.
What?
The joke.
Thanks, Bob. Try to keep up.
Thanks.
Was it Galaxy Quest?
Yes, it was. Thank you.
But yeah, look for the article. Oh, you can put. I did have one slide. If
I was going to ask you about that.
It's the cover picture from the article. This is the actual building in St. Petersburg, apparently, where one of Putin's buddies hires people. And until they got reported on in the Russian media, apparently you could go there at either 9 a.m. or 9 p.m. and you'd see like this huge squad of 20-somethings and 30-somethings filing in and filing back out. And then they changed their hours because they knew people were watching them.
Yeah, I have this picture in my head of this open room with all these computers and guys with flannel shirts and hipster haircuts and those weird sock hats. Why do they wear those sock hats? I don't understand.
One of the interesting little tidbits, one of the interesting little online bits of investigation about this was somebody used a tool that would auto-search Instagram for the geographic coordinates that sometimes get encoded into photos.
Mm-hmm.
And they were able to identify a lot of the accounts that were being used by the troll army just for looking for photos that were posted from this building. Because they hadn't bothered to strip that data off the photos.
Yeah,
good.
That's clever.
Of course, now that they know he did that, they've probably gotten cleverer about it. But
yeah.
Anyway,
that was really weird.
Very weird story.
Yeah, it is weird. Yeah.
Not super skeptical in orientation, except so far as you should be skeptical of news you see on Twitter. Always.
Yeah. And it's just like this is like a stepping up of some of the things that are already happening on the internet. Like there are individuals that do this stuff, but now there's like a systematic, organized troll army. Yeah. So
and there are definitely, I don't know about troll army and I don't know about anything of that scale, but there are definitely kind of black hat marketing people in the U.S. and in Europe who do stuff like that on Twitter in terms of having like hundreds of interrelated accounts that they will use that will retweet each other and reply to each other and stuff like that. And it's easy to stumble on those. I've stumbled on groups of those accounts before because sometimes a lot of them they'll use robotic means to figure out who they want to follow to look like real accounts, and occasionally like a whole batch of them will follow you all at once. And I noticed a batch of them a few weeks ago because a whole bunch of accounts with like very obviously stolen photos of models as their avatars were all following me, and I would click on them and Twitter would tell you who your followers are in common, and there would be I would have nothing in common with this person, but I would notice that they were tweeting links to alt-med websites. So it was obvious that somebody that was trying to make alt-med websites trend on Twitter was simply using some sort of a tool that was looking for keywords. So I tweet, what's the harm thing, what's the harm in chiropractic? It probably keyed on the word chiropractic and said, oh, follow this guy. And so a whole bunch of those accounts, but you could tell that it was a bot army because they were all tweeting the same link. There was variations on the individual accounts. They weren't absolutely identical, but they were tweeting links to the same domains, and they were retweeting each other and following each other and stuff like that. Very common technique on Twitter. I don't know if it actually works, but people do it all the time.
I get more randomly generated personalities following me on Twitter than
eggs
than actual followers. Like I get, I'd say 3 times as many fake followers as real followers.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't get any fake followers.
Well, the way that they
Left out.
you can see that the profile is automatically generated because it has a bunch of words like food freak, period, and it's the same formula over and over. Food freak, fast driver, likes weed, or it has all these different things that seem to be kind of mixed, and they just put those, these characteristics up, just short little sentences, and it's clearly, and then you look at their followers and the people they're following, and they're the same number,
Yeah.
I got a question on the Q&A app from a Buckaroo Samurai. Let me pull it up, the question. A lot of people accuse Monsanto of using sock puppets accounts to AstroTurf. I personally don't believe this, but it is actually any evidence. Is there any actual evidence of this? Does it boil down to the shill gambit? Now, there's a couple of terms in here. You want to explain these terms, Tim?
Sock puppet accounts and shill gambit?
Yeah.
And astroturfing.
Yeah. Well, and astroturfing is, that's basically what those marketing accounts and what the troll army is trying to do is you're trying to make something look popular that really isn't by providing fake support for it online. So comments on a blog or Twitter posts or Facebook posts or fake likes or any of this stuff. And you can generate it, all this stuff is programmatically done, so you can write programs to do these things. So people will create bot accounts, and Twitter tries to kill these accounts, but people have gotten better and better at putting fake avatars on there and fake names and stuff. It's still, they always just pull it out of a file or something. So you look at them, and if you know anything about how people use Twitter, you can usually spot these accounts because often they'll have account names with large numbers of digits. People will make their name like Tim Farley 42, but usually people won't make their name Tim Farley 129743441. I mean, who would want that as their account name? But these robots use it because you have to pick an account name that's not been used before, so they just
blame the robots.
But one of the things I've noticed that they will do a lot is they'll make a display name that's completely different than the handle. So the handle will be Jane Doe, and the display name will be Karen Smith, and it's like, why would anyone do that? Why would a real person do that?
Yeah.
I could see the handle being, Krelnick, and the real name is Tim Farley.
Oh, that seems implausible.
Or your real name is your handle, and you're using a fake name to be funny. But why would you use 2 seemingly real names? Also, sometimes they'll just steal the bio off of another account, and if you Google the bio, you'll find the other account, or they'll steal the avatar off of another account. But of course, a lot of people use fake avatars. People put Arnold Schwarzenegger as their avatar or whatever just to be funny. But yeah,
I've never used Arnold Schwarzenegger as an avatar.
The accusation is that these outfits use these techniques. Often it's not really them. They will hire some sort of unscrupulous marketing company that is using these means to create bot accounts or whatever. One of the reasons you hire an outside company is it gives you plausible deniability if you get caught. You say, oh, well, we didn't know they were doing that, and we fired them. And it can't be traced back to you. Now, I don't know if there's any real evidence that Monsanto's doing that. I mean, obviously, a lot of skeptics who are pro-GMO get accused of being Monsanto sock puppets all the time. It's very hard to really prove anything like that. Even the fact that an account only tweets about that one topic, there are obsessed people that only tweet about one topic. And some of these bots will...
They're such one-dimensional characters.
Some of these bots will tweet, random other stuff in between the paid link tweets. And often those will be stolen.
Seems to be popular.
Yeah, inspirational quotes, things that they could get a file of. It's easy to get a file of inspirational quotes, but a lot of times they'll just steal
Constantly
other tweets.
retweeting Deepak Chopra.
Yeah, Deepak Chopra or whatever.
Baby goats in pajamas.
Yes, or goats screaming. That's an account I follow, by the way.
Once you find one account that appears to be one of these bots, it's usually pretty easy to find a bunch of the other bots that belong to the same marketing company just by looking at who that account follows and who follows them and who they're retweeting, and you can just kind of follow the links out. And you'll find some real people, but usually you'll find a cluster of 10 or 20 or 50 accounts that are all following each other and retweeting each other and have very few actual real humans following them.
You'd think that Twitter would have some kind of heuristic engine that could pick out these accounts.
They try, but it's very hard to do it accurately.
Yeah,
it really is.
Well,
people use Twitter in different ways. Some people get a Twitter account and never tweet.
Yeah.
They just log in because they just want to read.
Yeah.
Use it as a news.
And it's definitely the kind of pattern recognition that humans do well, but machines don't necessarily do well.
Yeah.
Since we're talking about robots, thanks Tim for all that really cool information. I'm gonna push this button over here because I'm gonna move along and talk about robots that actually have some kind of substance to them. They're not just robots on the internet. They're robots that actually do stuff. And this is cool. Okay, this has been posted around all over the place on Facebook. Bob sent me this, but I had seen it because Kyle with the Nerdist had posted about it earlier. This is this will make your skin crawl. An untethered miniature origami robot. Yeah, there we go. See, so this thing is made out of some PVC, and it's got some folds that have been laser cut into it, and there's a magnet on it. You place it on a heating element, and it folds up a certain way according to its geometry. You apply an oscillating magnetic field to it, and it does stuff. like crawl up your arm.
God.
And run around little poles. Here's it. It's delivering a little block into. Here we go, everybody. Goal! Okay, and it swims. There you go, it's swimming.
Does this work if you order something very, very, very small from Amazon?
It likes little things of wire. It's carrying that one off because it likes it for some reason. Mm-hmm. And it can jump a ramp. And finally, I think the last clip
is the magnetic field. Is that generated on the little guy itself, or
it's digging its way through us? There you go. Look, isn't that cool? It's so cute. It almost has a little personality. Okay, so there's well, this is the last thing. Apparently, because it's made out of.
This is horrible.
Yeah, it's made out of some material. It's plastic, and you put it in acetylene, or this is not acetylene. This is acetate. And of course it dissolves. I don't even know what acetone. Yes, and I'm not even sure why that's a big selling point. But the thing is it's the folds are generated from mathematically, and the behavior is an artifact of the folding of the thing. the magnetic field. It's not like a plate with like a magnet underneath dragging it around. You know those little kids games you have with little cars, and the one with the iron filings and the mustache you can make with the magnet behind it. It's not like that. Apparently, it's just there's a plate, and there are these coils underneath that just kind of oscillate. They just go back and forth in the magnetic field, and the folds of it causes it to move around. I'm not entirely sure all in the details. They didn't have like the specifics on how they make specific behavior, but wow, that's kind of cool. And there's a growing trend. A lot of experiments that are in this area. Like I covered one late last year. These micro, tiny little things that were doing manufacturing tasks. Remember that with the little sticks? Mm-hmm. They were like building tiny little trusses, and those were driven by a magnetic field as well. So it's another extension of that kind of thing. It's cool, and it makes my skin crawl. It's not quite as cool as I thought. I thought maybe that there was some kind of intelligence in them, but no, it's essentially just it's mechanically driven, which is kind of cool because it'll scale down. A lot of nanotechnology is based on the geometry of the objects that you can build, because that's all you can really do at that size. And it'd be really cool to see how small you can get something and have them like drive around and do little tasks at tiny little microscopic levels. And no, they will not be in your bloodstream soon, as far as we know. But still. Isn't that cool?
That's a weird little thing.
Yeah, I think that's really cool. The other thing that I want to throw up on the screen here, I talked about last week. I mentioned that this weekend coming up, Friday and Saturday, is the DARPA Robotics Challenge in outside of LA, California. If you're in the area, it's free. Go. It's cool. It's gonna be walking robots, and they're gonna like do crazy stuff and
then go crazy and kill all the.
I don't think
spectators.
I don't know. Maybe there'll be at least one spectator killed, because
Is that one of those
always one that
special
mounts off, right?
qualifications?
We pick a spectator at random and feed him to a robot.
Gosh, we do the sacrifice to the robot gods. And, Well, this a lot of the robots that are going to be at the DARPA Robotic Challenge are Atlas robots. This is a robot that if you've seen any walking robot online, you've probably seen a Boston Dynamics robot, and if you've seen any humanoid walking robots online, you've probably seen the Boston Dynamics Atlas, which is been provided by Boston Dynamics to a lot of teams so they can just concentrate on control software. There are teams that have built their own robots, the RoboSimians, one I talked about on here, and there's another one that's not quite humanoid. There's a Chinese one. Remember we talked about that one? That one is really cool. Well, this one is one to watch. This is done by the Italian team, or one of the Italian teams. The Italian Institute of Technology built their own robot, and it's called the Walkman. No, not affiliated with Sony at all.
They're so going to get sued.
Unfortunately to all of us 80s people who grew up in the 80s. The coolest thing about this is, one, the head just looks deadly. That's my cool things about it. But it also has these neat articulated hands. This video is one of the videos they produced to show its ability to do some of the basic DARPA Robotics Challenge tasks, including opening doors and rotating valves and various stuff. This is one of the teams that's been added so that they have the 25 total teams competing this weekend. Let's see, it's going to draw. It's just doing its warm up with the hands, which is kind of cool. If you watch this video from our show notes, you'll be able to listen to the music, which, by the way, is very annoying. Just want to point that out. I'm sorry for the music in this video. This is 3 minutes long. Let me skip ahead just a tiny bit, because I want to get to, okay, so here it is doing its door opening, and that's kind of cool.
That would be super creepy to be sitting in a room and see the door open and see that on the other side.
And this is kind of neat. This is semi-autonomous, so a lot of this is it's using its own vision system to locate what it has to do and decide how to put the arms in the right orientation, and then grab accordingly without damaging it, because although in the case of these particular hands, they don't look like they're very strong. But the arms themselves are capable of quite a lot more than they can. So, and this is another example of the driving task. And yeah, a lot of the robots use like a handle on the steering wheel, but this is a humanoid robot using its own vision system and one of its arms and its foot to drive a standard humanoid vehicle.
We call that human vehicle.
Yeah, well, human vehicle. You know what I mean? But that just blows me away. Doesn't it blow you away that we can do this?
It's kind of insane.
Yeah.
I've seen video of dogs driving.
Yeah.
So, you know, it's pretty cool.
Yeah, there's that commercial that's on all the time. I'm sure that's completely real.
Yeah,
No, there was a place in Australia, they actually got dogs to drive.
Okay.
A close course, but, you know.
And I will just add this to the list of things that robots are going to kill us for by calling them not as good as dogs.
Well,
so.
Except for the robotic dogs, they're going to kill us because people keep kicking them.
Because we keep kicking them, yes. Kick the robots.
Stop kicking the robots.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. So those are my two things.
All remember.
If you're not in California this weekend, they are going to be streaming all this stuff live Friday and Saturday. I will link to their website, which is DARPARoboticsChallenge.com. It's very, very cool. Go check out the teams. Go check out what they're doing. And this is like bleeding edge experimental humanoid robot stuff, and it's damn cool. So there you go.
There's a question about the origami robot.
Is this the first application? Yeah, this is from Ben Bradley. Is this the first application of an origami to robotics? I don't think so. There are. I'm going to have to go back and check my notes, but I know there are 3D printed robots that have been used in other like PhD papers and research. I'm sure I talked about this in a previous episode, and a lot of the 3D printing, I
would recommend you go back to the first episode and then watch them in sequence until you come up to the point where you talked about them before.
That's true.
And then watch all the ones after that as well.
Yes.
And if you could catalog what I've talked about that entire time, that would be awesome.
Great.
And all the books we've done in book time.
Yes, that's the problem we have is the book time. Okay, fine. No, they're I know that they've been doing a lot with 3D printing, and one of the I just thought of one. Not necessarily origami, but I know the 3D printing works better if you have or manufacturing of these things are better if you have like a plate and you press folds into it, and then you can fold it up from there. So there's a lot of manufacturing that's based on doing a flat surface and then folding it into a shape, which is really close to origami. And I think the origami association in the article was just, a way of explaining it to people who are reading it. So it's not exactly origami because it's not folding paper, and there's no cranes and all that. So anyway. I'm sure that the example I thought of was the RoboBees. You remember that? The little flying. They're about this big, and they're little flying robots. They press manufactured the wings, and then they fold them into place to make those. So it's kind of origami-ish.
Has anyone made a robot that can do origami?
Ooh. Yes, I think.
Oh God, for Richard Saunders.
Yeah, I will have to Google that. I remember reading an article last year, or it was 2 years ago, about a robot that was designed to do paper folding. And there's so much happening in robotics nowadays. I have to really pick and choose what I talk about. So anyway, anybody's interested in that, I will probably find the link and post it in the show notes because that's kind of cool too. Who's next? I'm going to pass it on to Bob and see what Bob knows about the ugly, apparently.
No, actually, there are just no good jokes for what I'm talking about today.
Another one of those topics.
No, but this actually is kind of uplifting. It's just, so this week the Center for Inquiry started a new initiative apparently prompted by the plight of one of their writers and associates who lived until this week in New Delhi. The writer's name is, if you could bring up the image, Dr. Taslima Nasreen.
Oh, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
She's a physician and a secularist, and also a novelist and poet, whose Women in Secularism conference presentation became a cover article for the February issue of Free Inquiry, which is put out by CFI. Dr. Nasreen's advocacy of human rights and secularism has turned out to be an enormous bother for her. She's originally from Bangladesh, but fled there to West Bengal in the mid-90s because of her activism on behalf of women's rights. Then she had to flee further west to New Delhi, but her situation there has apparently become untenable. She was one of 84 individuals who was placed on a death list issued by a group named, and if you could bring up the image, the Ansarullah Bangla Team is what they call themselves. Yeah, so this is the group that's been implicated. That could be upside down. I don't know. The group's has been implicated in the recent slaughter of secular bloggers in Bangladesh. 8 people of that list of 84 have been killed. And recently, it seems Dr. Nasreen was given enough cause for concern that she fled to the U.S. and asked for help from U.S. organizations. This included CFI, who welcomed her to Buffalo last week on Wednesday. If you look back at Dr. Nasreen's career, you might well suspect that she could end up on an Islamist hit list, as she asserts that Islamism has co-opted the young secular state of Bangladesh, which was established when it became independent in the early 70s, maybe 72. 8 of the people... Oh, I'm sorry, jump back to earlier part of my notes. Her criticism is directed both at state officials and directed at religious people. So she has lots of enemies. I'll read an illuminating paragraph from her Free Inquiry article. Quote, in Bangladesh in the beginning of the 1990s, hundreds of thousands of Islamists burned my books publicly and marched to demand my execution. Fatwas, Islamic religious edicts, were issued against me. A price was set on my head. Instead of resisting the Islamists, the government took action against me. I was accused of blasphemy and finally thrown out of my country. My crime was writing these words, quote, it is dangerous to follow the religious scriptures in this modern world. Not only the Quran, but all the religious scriptures are out of time, out of place, and they are all anti-woman. And it turns out that her life in India wasn't all that different, which brings us to some recent events. Things seem to be coming to a head with respect to this group, the ABT. Last week, Bangladesh's Home Ministry outlawed the ABT on the heels of the assassinations that their members have taken credit for in court, like pled guilty to. Also, there was I think that the people get the PEN Awards. That organization, that group of writers, including Salman Rushdie, oh, I'm forgetting her name. Handmaid's Tale. Atwood.
Yeah.
Okay.
Margaret
Yeah.
Atwood,
Yeah.
Atwood. Margaret Atwood. They signed a letter encouraging action to be taken, by the government against these terrorists who are threatening these writers. So the Home Ministry outlawed the ABT, and in response, if you could bring up the next image, the ABT put the Home Minister on a death list. You just don't take criticism well. Anyway, I emailed Paul Fidalgo at CFI for a little bit of information about what Dr. Nasreen's plans are. She apparently has a green card and has had one for a while now. And so, as I understand it, she's here for the time being. I'd like to thank Paul and Michael Dodora for sending me info about the Islamist groups who are doing this, responsible for this. Paul, however, was unable to explain this.
What this?
Is there
Image?
another slide?
Yes.
The next slide. You
Next
didn't say
slide.
anything. Yes.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Paul Fidalgo Ministries. I didn't know about that one. Hey.
Yeah, he said that it messes up his vanity searches on Google.
Yeah. Wow.
Anyway, yeah. So
that's embarrassing.
I know. Well, it's just irony.
It appears that people are sending him checks, though.
Oh, that's good.
and using
true.
Not to this.
proper pens, too.
Huh?
And using proper pens as well.
Yeah.
So CFI is working with a handful of other people who are also being threatened. It doesn't sound like very many, but a lot have been in contact looking for some sort of help. So CFI has set up Bring Up an Image, a fund to help these secularists, and you can contribute to the Free Thought Rescue Fund at the CFI website, which I'll link to in the notes. So that's the update there. It's really kind of refreshing to see some tangible action being taken on the part of someone. That's really nice to see.
Yeah.
So good on them. Well done.
Yep.
Thanks, Bob.
Mm-hmm.
Questions? No questions? Betsy Camp says Margaret Atwood.
Yes.
Because okay.
It's big nerd fail on that one. When I
I got Margaret, and it's Canada. It was like I was doing a cold reading.
It's like we all.
I was
like,
trying to
locked
tell
up
you
on
the
that
name,
one.
but I had myself muted because I was typing and I didn't want to bother you guys. So.
Don't.
Yeah.
All right.
So that's that.
Okay, that's that.
All right. Good night, everyone.
No.
Oh wait.
Really quick, I retweeted Ben Bradley's tweet because he found the video of the Da Vinci surgery robot doing origami. So
There you go.
there you go. So there's a robot doing origami. Sorry, Richard Saunders.
So you could have that robot make the other robot?
And would
Soon.
those be his children?
Soon. Yes. Up next, Eve. I don't have to do this whole intro. This week in creationism, the good, the bad, and the ugly. Here, how's that?
Yeah.
Oh, sorry, that's Final Countdown.
So the good, the bad, and the ugly of creationism. Now I'm actually going to go in reverse order so we can end on some good news.
Oh, good.
So we're going to start with the ugly. If you can bring up the first slide.
The ugly.
Yeah, Ken Ham.
What is he doing? Do I want to know what he's doing?
You'd be shocked, I tell you.
He's talking about something.
Now, to be fair, it would be more accurate to call this the silly rather than the ugly.
Yeah. They're not mutually exclusive.
Well, it's true. This week, Ham got upset because some Christians said that their acceptance of the Big Bang Theory and the theory of evolution by natural selection did not interfere with their faith. Now, to be fair and honest, we all know that there are some atheists and skeptics who are also capable of having a hissy fit over such statements, but we'll cover that in the next installment of This Week in Pick Your Battles.
Nice.
So, first, Dr. Leslie Wickman, a former test astronaut who worked on the Hubble Telescope project and is chair of the Department of Engineering and Computer Science at Azusa Pacific University. She has written a book called God of the Big Bang, How Modern Science Affirms the Creator. Yeah. On the Church Boys podcast, she said that for her, science and religion don't have to be in conflict. Quote, it's an illusion of conflict perpetuated by people at extremes of the dialogue, unquote. Meanwhile, 93-year-old former real astronaut John Glenn said, I don't see that I'm any less religious by the fact that I can appreciate the fact that science just records that we change with evolution and time, and that's a fact. That's 3 facts in that sentence. It doesn't mean it's less wondrous, and it doesn't mean that there can't be some power greater than any of us that has been behind and is behind whatever's going on. Now, renowned non-astronaut and non-scientist Ken Ham disagrees, saying that Wickman and Glenn were ignoring... No, Australians get mad at me.
Yeah, we're going to do Canadian accents on the show because they won't get mad.
Yeah. That Wickman and Glenn were ignoring many theological and scientific problems. Now, the scientific problems he raises suggest, and I know it's going to seem almost incomprehensible to you, but it suggests that perhaps Ken Ham does not properly understand science.
That seems plausible.
I'm making the face internally that he's making right there.
Yeah. Now, I won't go into details, but there was something about how an amoeba won't turn into an astronaut, which is technically true.
No, I'm sure that amoeba have been taken up on
I'm sure, yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
so
yeah.
he's just
but
wrong.
It's not usually what we think of as an astronaut. But...
They even have little tiny spacesuits they put on.
Yeah. I mean,
they're already floating around, so like, yeah.
So it's sort of.
I bet you, for real, I bet you there's been experiments in space.
Yeah, I'm sure there have.
Yeah, so, yeah.
Okay.
So too fast.
Not even technically true. Now, the weirder thing, though, is that Ham, and I'm sure we've mentioned this before, but that Ham seems to have a kind of shaky grasp on the book of Genesis, which is his very most favoritist book of the whole Bible. The one from which he takes the name of his ministry, Answers in Genesis. His theological problem has to do with the idea that there was no death before sin. Nothing died before the fall. All the predatory carnivores were perfectly happy eating
the carnivores were being eaten by the robots.
Yeah. The carnivores were perfectly happy eating food for which their physiology was ill-adapted, or, if you prefer, ill-designed. If, says Ken, God used evolution to create, then he used a process of millions of years of death, disease, bloodshed, and suffering to create life. He then looked over the millions of years of death, bloodshed, suffering, disease, and animal carnivory, and called it very good. Now, I have looked and looked and looked at Genesis, trying to find the passage that says there was no death among animals before the fall, and what I don't even know about plants. And I can't find it. The humans were not subject to death before pissing off God by eating from the tree of knowledge of good and evil.
Don't touch my apples, man.
Because he's pulling it out of his ass, Eve.
Yeah, but it doesn't say that tigers and T-Rexes were happily existing on nuts and berries. So we can
T-Rex,
but not apples.
Coconut.
Yeah, we can add non-theologian and non-biblical scholar to the list of Ken Ham's non-accomplishments. Well done. Well done. Anyway, moving on to the bad. Louisiana. Bad. No, there's no slide. Zach Coplin wrote a very good but depressing piece there's no slide for Slate about Louisiana's Science Education Act, also known as the Fuck the Constitution Act.
Nice.
Oh.
The act was passed by the Louisiana legislature and signed into law by Governor Bobby Jindal in 2008. It allows teachers to bring in supplemental materials to critique controversial science facts like evolution and climate change, and I think the Big Bang Theory as well. It allows teachers to teach creationism, really quite openly, and without having to couch it in the apparently non-religious terminology like intelligent design. Yeah, Copland has been fighting the act for years. So through a public record request, he uncovered emails in which educators discuss the teaching of creationism. So some examples. Science teacher, Shauna Creamer. Shauna Creamer, that's her name.
Okay.
She wrote an email to her principal, Jason Rowland, in which she said, "We will read in Genesis and then some supplemental material debunking various aspects of evolution from which the students will present." Which, aside from everything, kind of a badly written sentence.
Wow!
And then, it gets better. A parent wrote an email to Rowland complaining about another teacher, Cindy Tolliver, who was actually teaching evolution as a fact. Or, as the parent put it, Tolliver was pushing her twisted religious beliefs onto the class. Rowland responded by assuring the parent that this will not happen again. So, Louisiana is some kind of bizarro world where established science is a twisted religious belief and obeying the Constitution cannot be tolerated. Legislators and school boards have actually used the act to pressure schools and teachers to teach creationism. Representative Thomas Carmody, a co-sponsor of the act, emailed emailed the Bossier Parish School District, presumably someone specifically, to ask how they were complying with the act. Quote, "I appreciate your expediting the confirmation of your district's efforts outlined in the Louisiana Science Education Act. And you'll be pleased to know they are complying with it." One Bossier teacher emailed a teacher in another district saying that although the district has its problems, there are so many awesome Christians from the top down. We pray at school functions and probably break the law all the time! Exclamation point, exclamation point.
Oh, yeah. Exhibit 1, Your Honor.
Yeah, there have been several attempts to repeal the act, but they always fail in committee, most recently
It's not where it's going to fail. It's just going to be thrown out in kind of lower court.
They need they need a student or a parent to bring an action against one of the school districts.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. And Zach Copland's been agitating folks all around Louisiana to try to get somebody to bring one of those suits.
Yeah, because I mean it's incredibly egregious, and obviously in conflict with the Constitution, and they seem to be aware of this and just not care.
God.
So finally, some good news. Finally, we'll go with the end with the good, which is the Scottish Parliament has semi-officially stated that creationism should not be taught as a scientific principle. Alistair Allen, Minister for Learning and Science, sent a letter to the Education and Culture Committee in which he said,
Do the
guidance
accent.
provided... Sorry?
Do the accent.
No. Guidance provided by Education Scotland set out in the Principles and Practice Papers and the Experiences and Outcomes documentation for each of the 8 curriculum areas does not identify creationism as a scientific principle. It should therefore not be taught as part of science lessons. Yay!
Hey.
So Scotland voted to separate from Louisiana.
Yeah. Previously, the government had stopped short of providing any guidance about the teaching of creationism, official guidance, neither supporting it nor entirely condemning it, saying rather that schools should rely on teachers exercising their professional judgment rather than introducing legislation. And there still isn't legislation on the matter, but at least there are clear guidelines from the appropriate minister. Meanwhile, in England and Wales, teaching creationism as a scientific theory is prohibited in schools. And I was wondering, though Bob sort of used this joke already, but do you think anyone would notice if we just sort of, one night when everyone was asleep, switched Scotland and Louisiana? I'm sure, Britain would be happy to let Louisiana gain independence.
It's true.
That's true.
And we'd be happy to welcome Scotland as a state.
There you go.
There you go.
I looked it up, and amoebas have been astronauts for nearly 48 years.
Good for amoebas.
There was an experiment that flew on September 7th, 1967.
Wow.
Titled "The Effects of Weightlessness on the Nutrition and Growth of Pelomyxa carolinensis," which is a species of amoeba. It flew on Biosatellite 2, which was a space mission I had never heard of.
I never heard of that.
I haven't heard of it either.
But it was an unmanned experiment package that they flew.
All of amoeba.
Well, it had amoebas and it had a lot of other creatures and things on it.
Kittens.
Huh.
Baby coats and pajamas.
No. Bob, stop ruining everything.
Oh.
So amoebas have been astronauts for nearly 48 years.
So there you go.
Awesome.
Take that. That's my stern face. Thanks, Eve, for that very interesting and not as depressing as Bob's story, which is going to be my criteria from now on.
Lives were saved.
Money is being raised.
Yes.
Money's being raised by Paul Fatago. And we will post the address to Paul Fatago Ministries so you can send Paul funds. No. Well, I mean, he's going to need some funds since he can't order from Amazon anymore.
That's right. He got banned from Amazon.
So I know someone who's been banned from Amazon. Isn't that pretty?
Wow.
No, that's amazing. And that's another story for another show.
Yeah.
So that's all of our stuff for this week. All the meat. The meat's done. Ding. Time for the pudding.
Time for the pudding.
You can't have the pudding unless you eat your meat. So we've got trivia question thing. Anybody get the trivia question thing?
Yeah, several people got it very quickly. The first one I noticed was Mark Price, but Pierre also got it over on YouTube. Mark Price got it on Twitter, and it was, of course, the very first AIDS cases were reported in the weekly morbidity and mortality report, where, or maybe some other report. It was one of their regular publications of stuff going on that they've noticed. And at the time, they didn't know what AIDS was, but they noticed this cluster of deaths, and that was how it began.
Okay. So congratulations, Mark Price. As far as the videos behind me, several people guessed, and a lot of people got V, which is the trailer for the TV show V, is obviously the one with the big red V that keeps coming up.
I thought that the V might have been a
Yeah, it's
a
kind of a
giveaway.
giveaway. That in the 70s.
I even knew that.
Although
Yeah.
it was actually 1983 that show came out. So,
Mhm.
so it's
80s there.
post
It's
70s.
Charlie's Angels hair.
Yeah, Charlie's Angels hair. The other one, there were a bunch of good guesses, and most of them wrong. But Alex Murdoch did mention that he saw the Max Headroom, and that is actually playing the entire original movie. Max Headroom.
Max.
So
I'd say-
it's the movie that, like, the low budget movie that was made before they did the TV show and the remake of the movie. So
Yep.
so I mean, that's kind of amazing.
I actually, for the first time ever, got both of them.
Wow. So I must really be doing easy ones then.
There was a very interesting article recently, if you like Max Headroom, called The Oral History of Max Headroom.
Yeah.
On Verge or Medium or one of those websites. I linked to it in my Twitter feed.
Yep.
Had all sorts of interesting details I hadn't seen before. Like, I hadn't seen the Channel 4 did an ad just like a few years ago when they went to all digital and cut their analog feeds, and they got Matt Frewer to come back and play an old retired Max Headroom.
Was like bald.
Yeah, he was bald, and he was playing on an analog TV, and the guy was throwing the analog TV out while Max was like, no, stop.
So he didn't do that bad Australian accent that he did on what was that show? Eureka. Yeah.
No.
That was terrible. Okay. Okay, so we got two more things we got to do before the end of the show, so we can wrap everything up. First off is the announcements. Second is book time. So everybody get your books while I read this. Panelist Emerita, Sharon Hill, is running a scholarship fund to send educators to TAM. You guys know what TAM is? You should. If you're watching this, we've mentioned it many times. It's the Amazing Meeting. It's in Las Vegas. It's coming up. TheAmazingMeeting.com, I think, is the website. James Randi's going to have a big thing because it's his it's a tribute to James Randi. There's all kinds of really good speakers. I think the guy, what's his name? The guy from Saturday Morning Breakfast Cereal.
That show.
Yes, he's going to be like the keynote speaker, and I'd love to meet him, but unfortunately, I'm not going. But
isn't that guy from Virtual Skeptics going? The tall one?
Yeah, the one who talks about the web stuff all the time.
I will be there. I will be talking about web stuff on Sunday, and I'll be lurking around the rest of the time.
Okay, so there's a reason to go to TAM. But if you know an educator, a teacher, somebody like that, who wants to go but can't, or if you want to contribute to allow educators to go to TAM because it's a good experience for them, we'll put the link in the show notes.
And this is the last week. I think the fund, they close out the fund on Friday. So if you want to donate money, do it now.
Do it. Just do it. That's my Shia LaBeouf impression.
That was good.
They're already sending, I think, 5 educators. So let's throw some more money in there and up that.
Cool. Awesome. It's a good thing to do. Any other announcements besides Tim being at TAM? Tim Tam. You gonna have some Tim Tams at TAM, Tim?
Richard Saunders will be there, so I assume there will be some Tim Tams.
Yeah, cool, awesome. So, who's first for book time?
I have one.
Here. Go for it, Tim.
If network diagnostics cannot resolve the problem, there may be a problem with the Internet Service Provider, ISP, you are trying to connect to, with an external device you are using to connect to your ISP, or with the server you are trying to access. You can try the following steps. Make sure all modem cables are firmly plugged in, including the modem power cord, the cable from the modem to the computer, and the cable from the modem to the wall jack. Also check the cables and power supplies to Ethernet hubs and routers.
We're just grabbing random manuals now. Go, Bob. Go.
Yes.
If you're ready.
We moderns who have no memories at all may, like the professor, employ from time to time some private mnemotechnic not of vital importance to us in our lives and professions. But in the ancient world, devoid of printing, without paper for note-taking or on which to type lectures, the trained memory was of vital importance. And the ancient memories were trained by an art which reflected the art and architecture of the ancient world, which could depend on faculties of intense visual memorization, which we've lost. The word mnemotechnics, though not actually wrong as a description of the classical art of memory, makes this very mysterious subject seem simpler than it is.
I'm going to guess snow crash.
That's exactly wrong.
No. Go, Eve.
The thud of the newspaper on the driveway just before 7 a.m. heralds the arrival of our daily recommended dose of bad news. Rape in the dark streets, political scandal in the mayor's office, rising taxes on the state and local levels, and child abuse at the daycare center. But this particular issue brings good news, too. The media have seen fit to devote a spread to this story of an exciting discovery in Lowell, Massachusetts, of a new mini Stonehenge just north of Boston. The discoverer, an English teacher at a local college, feels sure that this rude circle of standing stones is perhaps the most significant of all the pre-Columbian sites in New England. He would date it to the 4th or 5th century AD. Yet he has done no excavations. There are no telltale Bronze or Iron Age artifacts lying around, and he has not even done historical research in the area to see if it might be the work of a 19th century landscape architect. It might be a folly, yes, he is quoted as saying, but I'd be very surprised if this doesn't turn out to be the real thing.
Mm-hmm.
Be prepared to be very surprised.
I know.
I would like to call it mini Stonehenge.
The Druids.
The Druids. You're funny, she said. I've been making some calls, and people love the sound of your book. I just want to put you in some rooms and see if you connect with anyone. That, Brad soon learned, was the essence of the entertainment industry, an endless neurotic blind date arranged by an ever-shifting army of 10% yentas. He stayed in LA for a week and took 40 meetings, including one with 2 men wearing identical navy blazers who had an office decorated with no less than 17 African rubber plants, and one in a back office on the Warner Brothers lot with an impossibly tan guy whose eyes were wider than a 5-year-old girl's at a pony farm. What's your book, Tim?
It's the little book that came with my Mac.
Of course it is.
Sorry, I didn't have anything else.
It was sitting on the table, and I just grabbed it. Was there. Okay, thanks, Tim. Bob, what's your book?
My book is Francis Yates' The Art of Memory. Classic study.
Yates.
Francis Yates.
Francis Yates. Okay, Eve?
Mine is Fantastic Archaeology, The Wild Side of North American Prehistory by Stephen Williams.
Okay. At first I thought it was a book that I had, but I have a book called Forbidden Archaeology or something like that.
I have that too.
Yeah.
I have that though.
Mine was a new book that I just got called Repeat by Neil Pollock, and there's the cover. It's all right. It's an interesting concept. It's a time loop book, but it's not remotely as good as Replay, which I can't remember the author right now, which is a really good time loop book. So there you go. And that's that. That's book time. Any more questions or comments by the audience? I hear crickets. So thanks for watching. Look at that. I am Salman Rushdie.
I have this as a button for some reason.
Okay.
Maybe
Okay.
that'll.
I don't know.
I have his books.
I believe it's inaccurate.
Yeah.
I think I'm not.
suspect-
He has another button that says this button is wrong.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, thanks for watching the show and participating, and we'll see you next week. I'm going to put the logo up, and there goes the music. I need to find this thing. I made the thing. Ready? Okay, here we go. Virtual Skeptics is an independent production of what'stheharm.net, Skeptical Humanities, myself, ICBS Everywhere, and Doubtful News. Wow, that's a list. Our logo is designed by Sarah Mayhew at sarahmayhew.com, and our theme music is by Musicant and Muse with Permission.